Hi, I'm Julie Underwood, your city manager. I want to share with you some of the unmet needs that the community members have asked us about. And those things are really the increasing demands that the community has really expressed over the years. So please stay tuned and listen to some of the stories by our department directors. Thank you. So Chief Holmes, maybe you can share some of the unmet needs you've experienced and heard lately.
Okay, I think there's two areas in the police department that cause me concern in the area of unmet need. And the first would be with emergency management. Mm-hmm. And as you all know, we're an island, and that presents unique challenges, and the growing demands on emergency preparedness continue. And I think about the partnerships we have with the school district and some of the needs they have for emergency management and planning, our business district, and then the residents themselves. There are ongoing growing needs in that area. And the second area I think that worries me is the public records request area. I know 11 years ago I cut or reduced our staffing from 2 FTEs to 1.5 because at the time we didn't have this growing crush of public records, and by law we have to respond to public records requests. So I'm now in a position where I've hired somebody on a contract to do that, but those public records are not going to decrease. So I need to get a model in place where I have permanent funding for that, because that's another area that's not getting any slower.
Chief, one of the things we're also trying to highlight for the community are really things around unmet needs and things that you've heard the community express they'd like more of. What services do they include for your department?
One of the biggest services that we are asked for more of is turnaround times for plans review in our fire marshal's office. And currently we have a full-time fire marshal who is funded through the general fund, and then any overtime is funded through review fees or permit fees. Mm-hmm. We also have an assistant fire marshal, and that position is an overtime position that is fully funded through the permit fees. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the individual who has taken that on is limited to, he only works on his days off from being on the line and responding to calls as a battalion chief. Now, the other issue is that it takes a long time to get trained up for this. He has been in that position for over 2 years, and he's just gotten the training to be able to do residential. And is just starting to move into the commercial realm.
So it's very technical.
It's a very technical field, and it's challenging to get somebody, A, who's interested in that, and B, then to get the education and the certification necessary to meet the needs and the standards in that position. But if that were something that, if I could, I would get a full-time assistant fire marshal because of what's going on in the community right now with all of the building. Now, the beauty of the plan that we have in place currently is that if building declines, we can then back off those hours and have that flexibility.
Wow, thanks. That's very helpful to know.
Okay.
Obviously, maintaining parks, are there any unmet needs there? I know I've definitely heard some around weeding and maintenance of particular areas, and I know I'm not a big fan myself of herbicides and pesticides, and I know it's a low cost thing, but what have we heard there?
Well, I think that what people want there is to hear more about what we're doing and how we're doing it naturally with messaging, and they're very interested in tree health, and so I think that one thing we might be lacking is some messaging around signage in big parks and in Pioneer Park, and being able to really get the message out as to why we do use herbicides and or don't. So some of that's just a communication tool as well.
Okay, and then what about our seniors? Are they expressing any needs that we're not meeting?
Yeah, we've got such a great senior program and such great senior population on Mercer Island. I think one thing that we lack is a robust transportation program. We currently offer a couple days a week. We've got a couple nice senior buses we use. We could use more. Okay. And I think we could elaborate on our program by offering 5 days a week on and off the island, not just to their home and to the community center, but their appointments, the grocery store, doctor's appointment, hair appointments. I think that's an unmet need.
And so right now the service is only to and from the community center?
It is, and then Wednesdays we do grocery shopping.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Cindy, when I'm out in the community, actually one area I do hear from parents about are some of the unmet needs that your department has. Can you talk about those?
Yeah. Well, recently we went through a strategic planning process, just kind of every Youth and Family Service organization does that, as well as cities. They do a community needs assessment.
Okay.
So we did this recently, the past 2 years. I'd say there were 3 primary needs that we have that we think really need attention right now. The first is that our emergency assistance, and that's the program that gives helps with rental assistance, utility assistance, meals during the holidays, anything to do with food insecurity and being able to have a shelter overhead. And rents are increasing so much right now, and you probably know that. I think about 10 years ago, 7 years ago, you could get an apartment for about $900. Now, 1 bedroom is about $1,700 in King County, and it's really reflected here too. And so, any low-income family is really having a hard time with rent and just getting by.
Okay.
And we have our share. We have our share of elderly people and single parents. So, having funds to help people with getting by and maintaining a family, that's the most important thing. The next thing I think that we would consider is at Islander Middle School, there's a need to increase the mental health services there. That's a time when youth are most at risk, is middle school. And with the growth in the island, we now have 4 elementary schools feeding into 1 middle school, and that has the lowest amount of service per capita. So we need to increase that right away. The foundation, by the way, helped with that for the half-time person, but we need to go up to a full-time.
And so that would make 2 full-time counselors.
We'll make 2 full-time
if we
health
could do
counselors.
that.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And then I would say the third area is equally important to that is community-based mental health at Luther Burbank. We are always trying to maintain no wait list, but there can sometimes be as high as a month or 2 wait lists.
Wow.
So we just see an increased demand, and that really reflects King County and the nation. The demand for mental health services from almost every age group has increased.
Wow.
Yeah. So just
Wow.
keeping up with that. So I would say those are our 3 areas: emergency assistance,
Okay.
middle school counselor, and then mental health and community-based services.
Great. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah.
Jason, what are some of the unmet needs that the community has expressed to you?
So, being an island that's surrounded by trees, trees become a hot and common topic for us to deal with. So, in 2017, we added a half-time arborist back into the right-of-way team to help with our boundary tree assessment program. So, our half-time arborist is actually getting out and doing a preventative look and inspection of these trees to help us minimize down trees that block our roadways that then impact public safety and our ability to respond in emergencies. However, there's a growing need for more tree work on this island. So
we're not keeping up with the demand, really.
we're certainly not keeping up with the demand.
Okay.
So the half-time arborist is responsible for the boundary assessment, but we also get a number of inquiries and citizen requests that come in for emergency tree responses, or they're concerned about this tree. Unfortunately, it's not just a simple tree inspection, because we have to go out and pull boundary lines for all of these areas. And there's
And by
quite a
that
bit
you
of
mean trying to determine if the tree belongs to the city or belongs to the private?
absolutely.
Okay.
And so, I mean, if it's
Okay.
not our tree, then unfortunately it's the homeowner's responsibility.
Got
to do
it.
But that's an important first step to take in terms of prioritizing where the tree belongs and who's responsible for
Okay,
it.
and did we have a full-time arborist before the recession, or did we?
We did have a full-time arborist before the recession, and that was
Okay.
one of the position cuts that we
Had to
put
make.
into, yes, that we had to
Okay.
make. And we just restored it recently
Okay,
due to the growing demand from our community for tree maintenance.
got it.
So certainly trees is an unmet area that we see a lot of need for. Additionally, because we are lean staffed, we get hit with these unexpected emergencies. Last year was a great example where we had multiple landslides that happened throughout the course of the year. And due to the circumstances surrounding those emergencies, our existing resources, our city staff, was responsible for doing a lot of the repairs.
Right.
That takes away from our time and ability to respond to other emerging issues. And so emergencies happen, you can't plan for. You can plan for them to the best of your ability, but they happen. You have to respond. But what it does put an increased demand on some of those other deferred maintenance items that come in from the community.
So you get a backlog.
We get a backlog. Our ability to respond to a pothole isn't as responsive as we would like it to be. Our ability to respond to a tree request isn't as responsive as we would like it to be.
I see.
And unfortunately, the emergencies have become
More frequent.
more frequent. Big challenge for us.
All right.
The other challenge that I would see from Public Works is, although it's not directly tied to the general fund, it is tied to the capital side. So we have an existing capital resource team, an engineering team that plans a lot of our capital projects. We have a number of identified project needs out there. However, funding becomes the challenge. So we hear a lot from the community in terms of PBF implementation, pedestrian and bicycle facility improvements.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We have some great projects in the queue that we would love to do, but we don't have the funding availability to do the actual work. In addition, we have limited staff resources, so if we do more projects, we run into that, that challenge of which staff is going to manage the project and get it done. It's a great want and desire by the community, but it's challenging to get all of it done with the funds.
Great. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, one of the things we're asking all our departments to share are what are some of the unmet needs you've heard out there?
Sure. So along the same lines, IT and GIS, our departmental needs generally are trying to meet the demand that the city departments are putting on us, sort of in a direct relationship with the services they're providing to the community. And so we have sort of a help desk service and a project management service, and we get requests all the time from departments who want to somehow improve a service. So payments is a good example that we've talked about. There are a lot of ways to make payments these days. Crazy things like Bitcoin, but more realistic things like Apple Pay or
Sure.
Google Pay or whatever it is. And the city could definitely improve in that area. A lot of departments who receive payments want to improve in that area. So that's a good example. We have probably a list of 20 or 30 different technology projects, whether it's communication and engagement tools with the public who want to consume information from Facebook, Twitter, the web, TV, radio, and we have to somehow push messages out through all those channels without doing each one of those individually. So we have city manager's office, communications folks asking us for engagement tools. We have, police and fire, generally speaking, work on a regional basis, and they have regulations they have to comply with. So we see a lot of stuff coming out of, regional initiatives.
Well, I'm assuming security is a huge piece of what you
Security
do.
just keeps rising to the top of the conversation for good reason.
Sure.
And security is challenging, and it's not cheap, and it takes different skill sets, and it really requires the whole organization kind of play a role. So we got to do a lot of training, and I think the community, generally speaking, expects us to be doing that without any real understanding of what it takes to actually provide that. So yeah, generally speaking, like I said, every department in their delivery of services generates either a refresh of a technology system they use, or they want to make it mobile, or they want to be able to do payments a little bit more conveniently, or they want it to be able to connect to different systems so that it's more centralized. I mean, there's just all sorts of examples of how technology evolves over time, and all of those requests usually come to us, in the budget process. We don't ever have the capacity to meet all of the demands. We go through a fairly rigorous sort of prioritization effort before it gets to finance and the city manager's rigorous prioritization process, which, as goes through the council process. And so every budget cycle there are, I would say half the list just gets into a category of we just can't do that. And then we review it in the next cycle, and we make sure that it still meets the current technology environment, and we do the same exercise. And so there's always demand that we don't meet.
Thanks for listening to all the unmet needs that our directors have shared with you. I think one of the things that we're always challenged with is really finding ways to meet the increasing demands our community has within the means that we can afford to do it. So thank you for listening, and we hope you'll learn more about the city's financial challenges by visiting our website at mercergov.org. Thank you.